All right, so we're going to just do a little tiny review on the PR58. So I'll bring up the photo, and you can write down the questions and answers as you feel you want to. Oh, by the way, thanks to that video, I went out and found this. And this right here, I love this picture. It's the one he used, but it's colorized. And I'm not going to get into all this right here because we don't need to. But these are the jets and the positions of the jets right here. But I told you about how these have very unique lever positions over here. So there's, these are actual positions in the cockpit. Full rich, auto lean, idle cutoff. So you can select those. So,
yeah.
yeah.
You mentioned that yesterday.
Yep. So, all right, we'll go back to the one we're familiar with. There we go. All right, PR58. What happens if the automatic mixture control fails? Just when? And, yeah, well, at altitude. Not necessarily on the ground, but just goes rich. What happens if the diaphragm between A and B fails? Then what? Okay, A and B, so you lose your air metering force. The poppet closes. Not all the way because auto spring holds it open, so it will run fine at idle. All right. There's a little seal between A and B. What happens if that seal ruptures, gets a leak?
You said A and B, you mean B and C?
B and C, yeah.
It runs lean.
Okay, we got a vacuum in B, got pressure in C. This fails. What's in C? Which is going to go which way? So we're going to get leak air into C or fuel into B? Fuel goes into B. Then where does it go? And it will tend to run rich. You just put a jet right there. So, yeah.
Will it suck on the diaphragm and close the poppet valve?
Well, I was just going to get into that. So if we lose a little bit of B, then we're going to lose some air metering force, so it would close a little bit. But I don't think enough to compensate for it. I guess it depends on how much it's leaking. You know, if it's just a drop every few minutes, then all you're going to do is get a blue stain. When you go to the airplane, go, I wonder where the blue stain's coming from. And that does happen with some carburetor fuel injection systems where C is allowed to leak into A, and you'll get dripping out of the impact tubes. But if it's a little tiny leak, I don't think you'd ever notice it. Just some blue staining. If it's a lot, then yeah, you're gonna get another jet going on there. What happens if the diaphragm from C to D fails?
Lower pressure.
You're going to blow a bunch of fuel up your discharge nozzle. Because the pressure D is higher than C.
Okay, so we remove, or just put a big old hole right in there. So I would start with, well, what happens to fuel metering force?
It's going to go up.
It's going to open up.
Are we going to lose fuel metering force or gain fuel metering force if we have no diaphragm here? Because if you think about it, if you had a big enough hole, then this would try and equalize, so you wouldn't get much. So I would see that as what's going to happen with fuel metering force? You only have three choices. It goes up, it goes down, it stays the same. Okay, so if we lose fuel metering force, then the poppet will. He's right. You lose fuel metering force. D is trying to close it. So A is going to open more. So if it opens more, it's going to let more fuel in. I think it's going to go pretty freaking rich. Yep. So this is designed to keep everything, well, it's after the metering jets. So now we're going to put it, well, it depends on how big these lines are, but I'd say it goes rich.
In that instance, could you, what would be considered considered flooding the carburetor, so at that point there's so much fuel that it wouldn't operate properly?
I think it's possible. Start pulling back your mixture all the way. Probably not all the way, but most of the way. You might work. Well, you're going to meter it with the mixture.
Well, we may, yeah.
Just like, think about the Marvel shovelers. Got a main metering jet, power jet, but you start pulling back on the mixture, and then the mixture becomes the main metering jet, really.
But you're bypassing the meter.
Well, the metering jet, you mean going this way?
Yeah.
It's possible that passageway is so small. I don't know how big that is. That's the thing. So I'm just speculating. So if that's small enough, then that will work this way. But if that's big enough, then now just a direct shot into here, yeah, that's not gonna go well. What if the vapor float fails? So it can fail two ways. It can fail all the way open or all the way closed. So what if it gets a hole in it and the vapor vent float sinks? So it sinks. So you're going to be sending fuel to the tank. So what? That's like you won't know. You may have some fuel mismanagement issues, but that's about it. I don't think you'd ever notice because you're just going to constantly. Now it's going to be like the PS5, which is always open. Just sending fuel back. Yeah.
So why have the valve there instead of just having a hole?
Well, they did on one. I don't know. This one, somebody decided to put that valve in because they were part of the float committee, and they needed their jobs.
And meet a quota?
Yeah, they had a quota. They had a whole bunch of these laying in the warehouse. Somebody ordered them. He's like, we got to sell them, man. If it fails in the up position, I don't know, the needle sticks up in there or something, then what happens?
You build up of air.
Okay, accumulate air, then you get air in the system, and then it's going to burp. Little hiccup maybe. I don't know. Best I can come up with. All right, starting a pressure carb. Let's think about this. The engine is off. It's not running. And I turn on my boost pump. Remember, because the engine pump isn't running. So I turn on my boost pump, which is in the tank, which is an electric pump, and it's going to come down. It's going to get to the engine-driven pump, which is going to find itself with a bypass valve. That bypass valve is going to run it right through here, into here. It's going to go through here. The idle spring is going to be holding it open because it's always holding it open. It's going to come right around through here. And assuming that the mixture is not in the idle cutoff position, it will find a way through and it will start spraying fuel in here. So, gotta be careful. And that's the same with fuel injection systems. So the carburetor needs air to draw it in, but everything else now, we can actually just start running fuel into the engine with it out running. And if you do that, the fuel will go in past the supercharger, usually find its way into a cylinder, and then you hit the starter, and you have fuel in there, and it comes up and does a hydraulic lock, and it destroys the crankcase, crankshaft, pistons, and everything. So I'd be very careful with this stuff. Now, I'll write something here. Let me see.
Is this where you started with idle cutoff and use pen?
The techniques vary. Everybody has their own little thing. So, but the point I want to make is, let's see, starting a pressure carb. Starting a pressure carb. So, because the idle spring holds open the poppet. Let me see. I'll put the boost pump, even the engine-driven pump, honestly, but that just doesn't make sense. The boost pump will provide fuel. Fuel to the discharge nozzle. Even if the engine is not running. The engine is in the OFF position.
So the boost pump is going to generate more pressure than the discharge nozzle pressure.
Yeah, because it's designed to run off the boost pump if you have to.
Yeah.
So, running the boost pump with mixture out of ICO, anything but all the way back. Can flood the engine and cause a hydraulic lock. I have some awesome pictures of a hydraulic lock in here that happened to a friend of mine from doing this very thing. I don't remember where they are. I don't have time to go looking for them. They're on the computer somewhere. But yeah, they called me up and said, "Hey, could you come by the shop? We need your honest opinion. We will tell you nothing." And so I showed up. There's the engine, and they have 2 cylinders off. I can see the connecting rod's bent, broken piston. What caused this? I looked at it and said, "Man, I'd hate to be the poor guy who started this engine and flooded it and did that." One of the guys just put his head down and walked away. I'm like, "Oh crap, it was him." I was like, "Yeah, it was us." So I said, "Man, how long did you run the boost pump?" "Oh man, not more than like 30 seconds. It's a long time. So starting fuel injected engines, fuel injected engines, you can do this because the injectors are right up at the intakes, but this is carburetor. It's a long way away. So chances are, like our Bonanza, if you do that, it's just gonna fall down. It's not going up into the cylinders because it's down. The carburetor's down below, so I wouldn't do that. But like on fuel injected engines, what I do is airplane. I'll bring the throttles up to open up the passageways. Then I'll bring turn the boost pump on, or bring the mixture up, turn the boost pump on. I'll watch the fuel flow, and as soon as I get an indication, I'll go 1, 2, 3, boom! I shut off the boost pump, and then hit the starter and bring the throttles back, and usually it starts. Everybody has their own little way of doing it. So let's see. All right, we can leave it at that. All right, water injection. This is new stuff. I'm going to try and actually spell it like I'm not having a stroke. INJECTION, water injection. There we go. Also called ADI for anti-detonation or anti-detonate injection. Theory of operation. Let's see. This is a example that I pulled out of somewhere, and it was pretty good. So if max power takeoff, mixture. So the mixture is about 10 to 1. Is that rich or lean, or best power?
Rich.
It's pretty freaking rich. And why is it so rich? What?
It's on takeoff? Because it's on takeoff?
Yeah, but why?
Oh. Because the Venturi's fully open, so you need more fuel.
Venturis are usually the same size all the time.
I mean, the throttle butterfly valve is open.
So what? Why is it 10 to 1?
Oh, because
You have
it's...
a boost on the intake?
What?
You have a boost on the intake?
No.
Are you looking for...
Since
Rich
what's the fuel
base
to
power?
air?
Why do avoid
What?
detonation?
The fuel to the 10 to 1 is the fuel to air mixture, and then you add water.
No.
Would you-
Just if max power and takeoff's 10 to 1. That's the end of the story right there.
Yeah, okay.
What is the 1?
Fuel.
Huh? Air. What is the 10? Fuel. I should put fuel mix. Try it again. 10 is
It's not running.
air, and the 1 is fuel. Why is that rich or lean?
Rich.
Why is it rich?
Because you want them at 12 to 1.
Why is it rich?
Because this power cell is 12.
It's rich
So
because-
we're in agreement that everybody, the engine manufacturers and carburetor and the fuel people, they're all in cahoots. They just want to dump extra fuel into this engine so that it costs us more, right? Yeah. And then if we were smart, I'd go in there and just rejet my engine and save some money. Or maybe take off with the mixture most of the way out.
So you're saying it's rich because that's how they designed it?
No, it's rich because
Yes, it's rich because that's how they designed it that way. Why did they design it that way?
Max loading the highest cylinder pressure.
This is all stuff we covered in like the first 2 days. Were you guys here for that?
You gotta
Physically, yes.
spoon feed us. You gotta.
I've said
Did you say, you gotta say it louder.
I've said it like 3 or 4 times.
Thank you. Extra fuel for, say it loud for me.
Cooling.
And, more importantly,
anti-detonation.
thank you. And anti-detonation. A lean mixture burns faster or slower? Slower. And if it burns slower, it's going to put the peak pressure at a point where burns slow enough. It would put the peak pressure afterwards, but I won't get into that. Anyway, it's going to put the peak pressure at the wrong time because the timing of it can cause detonation. Plus, we've talked about fuels like the 8087, the 8087, the red fuel, or 100-130 fuel. The lower number was the lean, and the higher number was rich. So we know that richer mixtures have better anti-detonation qualities. So it's got to run 10 to 1. That's pretty rich. Why is it running rich?
Cooling and anti-detonation.
All right.
There we are.
So if we leaned it out, it could
Detonate.
detonate, and that would destroy the engine. Okay. Where's best power? So did we lose best power?
Yes.
Okay, now think about what this goes on. Like if this goes on a P-51, what is its mission? Get the heck up in the air. You need that power. Go fast. What is the penalty for going slow?
Death.
Okay, you get shot, right? So if it's 10 to 1 to prevent it from detonating, and we now know that 10 to 1 is going to slow it down, is that good or bad? We got a problem or we're fine? We got a problem. Okay, so let's see. I'll write that down. This overly rich mixture causes a loss of power. So we want to fix this. So where should we put the ratio at?
12 to 1.
Let's lean it out. When we lean it out, then it's going to detonate. So that's where the ADI comes in. So using ADI allows one fuel air mixture to be at best power So if we can say, I'm going to turn on the ADI, let's dump some of the fuel out, bring it back closer to best power, and inject some water. So the fuel air mixture can now be at best power, which would be, well, that's wrong. So best power, what else? Best power means more power at same throttle. We got that. So water acts as a cooling agent. Also increases the fuel performance rating. Also known as octane. and results in an increase in takeoff power somewhere between 8 to 15%. Increase of takeoff, that's TO, power, of 8 to 15%. Which, I don't know, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, does it? But if you consider the R2800 is rated at 2,000 horsepower, 15% equals next to 300 horsepower. So, you know, I think it's worth it.
So that 2 units of air is enough because you're going to 12 to 1 from 10 to 1.
Yes.
Because it's enough to risk detonation that severely. Because obviously when you lean it out, you go to 18 or.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Alright.
Yeah, like I said, looking even at my own airplane, I'm at 18 gallons an hour on takeoff in full power, and cruise I'm around 10. So that's 8 gallons an hour of just detonation protection in there. So it's a lot. So again, they found that if you inject water into the cylinders, it's going to improve the octane rating of the fuel, so to speak. Helps cool, because, you know, I'm spraying some water. I don't have this in there, but I've read where the water turns to steam. You ever heard of steam engines? Well, the steam expands, and that presses on the piston and gives you increased performance and takeoff power. The problem being is you have water tanks aren't huge. So tanks are weight, so the tanks are reasonably small, so you just keep running around on them. Obviously, once you don't need the water injection, you would go back to cruise power, lean out your engine, and turn that off. Maybe not in that order, but there you go. So ADI.
Does that change anything as far as maintenance would be concerned?
Well, you always got to maintain something that's on the plane.
Like would it corrode the cylinders more, is what you're saying?
I don't think so, no.
Faster?
ADI fluid consists. I don't know of any civilian planes that have this. I should take that back. I think the old airliners had it. The one with radial engines. Water, which provides the cooling and the power. Alcohol, in case you crash. What's the alcohol for?
Only for crashing. Power.
Cooling and power. Alcohol is there to prevent freezing. And water-soluble oil. Prevents corrosion.
So is it a mix of all?
All that stuff goes in there.
Okay.
There'll be a ratio or it's not like a
I thought it was
33%.
It was like each one.
Yeah, you're going to put all of that in there. But the required equipment. You got to have a storage tank. Got to have a pump, a water regulator, a de-richment valve. What the heck's a de-richment valve?
Economizer?
Like an economizer. So we looked at that on the PR58. When you turn on the ADI, it has to de-richen it. You got to go from the 10 to 1 to 12 to 1. Otherwise, you're still at 12 to 1. Just put a bunch of water in there, and that didn't really help you. So you got to have some way for the carburetor to know that, hey, we've turned on the water, knock it off with the fuel over here. And necessary circuits. And controls. So operation. I'm kind of running out of time here, so I'm going real quick. Sorry. Pilot turns on system in the cockpit. Obviously, not going to leave the cockpit. Okay, the switch is in series with the map, manifold air pressure or oil pressure, to ensure the engine is at high power settings. Before the system engages. So what I mean by in series is you would have a switch that you would turn it on saying, I want the water injection, but it's got to go through one more switch, maybe hooked to the manifold pressure. Manifold pressure has to be high enough for that switch to close before the power goes to the pump, starts pumping water into the system. That way you can't turn it on at idle accidentally. So you could turn it on and nothing will happen. And when you go full firewall, boom, that other switch will close, then it's going to come on. All right. There is a light. I think this is a test question. Light indicates system is on. There is more, but I don't think any of this is on a test, so I'll just kind of go through it quickly. Again, that's the de-richment valve. So when the ADI system is on, pressure comes and the water pump is on, it's going to come down here, press on this diaphragm, press that needle close. That does what to the carburetor? Sets off a passageway, which causes us to lean to, we'll say, best power. Lean to best power. That'll do it automatically.
Where does water get added? Like,
I'm not 100% sure on that. It's not in the carburetor. It's got to be, like, I think it's an ejection nozzle that is right before the supercharger. It's like next to the discharge nozzle for, that's my thought. I'm not like 100%. Now, I want to tell you that I have spent an ungodly amount of time trying to understand this system right here. And there was one day where I almost got it, and then I don't. And I have read so many books, and it's like, it's just, I'm like, all right. But I left it here because there's a couple takeaways. One, it has the system right here. So you have the water tank and the pump and a check valve. So the check valve is to keep any low pressure from sucking things through here. So it's usually got it's one way, but it also has some resistance to it, so you can never suck the water out accidentally because it's attached to a vacuum. So turn the pump on, pump is going to pump it into here. Now there's an interesting fact that all of this backfills with some fuel. And so this is all full of fuel. So some of these valves in here are delay check valves and delay bleeds to delay the water. It delays the de-richment valve, I believe. No, we want that going. It's got a delay in it because it does go overly rich for a period of time. And so it's got, like I said, I had this completely down. I'm like, wow. And then it was like, no, that is so complicated. But anyway, so I'm not going to hold you to all that. So you got the water tank, you got a pump, you got an indicator light that indicates that the
System is on.
Quantity indicator, and that's kind of all we need to worry about right there because we're sort of out of time. So what did I write in my notes here? Let's see if you can follow along, just for fun. Let me see. Unmetered fuel pressure opens the metering pressure control valve. If no pressure is in D, water will not flow to engine. If ADI pressure is the same as D, then valve closes, thus regulating. Water flows to check valve and opens it. That's good. If ADI is off, fuel backs up into the fuel feed line. See the fuel feed line?
yeah.
fuel backs up in the fuel feed line. If delay bleeds, delay bleeds allow check valves to open slowly. Here's the delay bleeds. They allow these check valves to go down slowly, because they have to, this pressure right behind here. And remember, if you don't get this, it's okay. So, and I have not said that about anything else. This pressure has to push these down, and then that fluid has to work its way back up through that way and out. So, the delay bleeds allow check valves to open slowly. This allows time for de-richment valve to operate before extra fuel in the ADI system is injected to the engine. I was right. So you got to have this system has to create pressure and go to the de-richment valve and close it, because you're about to push a bunch of fuel in here. So you go super rich before the water is going to come. So we got to dump, close the de-richment valve. Then we're going to add extra fuel because the water's coming behind it. Seems like a stupid way to do something, but okay. The initial fluid to be injected is fuel. This will overrich in the engine and cause loss of power and hesitation. The water alcohol enrichment valve, spring pressure water enrichment, right there, that one right there, modifies the flow of the ADI. Fuel will initially flow through the main WA jet as the WA water alcohol flows past the check valve. Fuel has been pushed out, and it is safe to allow more fluid to flow since it is no longer fuel. As the water alcohol pressure replaced fuel and pressure increases, the water enrichment valve is open more, allowing more ADI to flow. When the tank is empty, your pilot shuts off system, light goes out, de-richment valve opens, and the engine returns to normal fuel-air ratio. So there's a bleed. This goes down slow. This goes down slow. And this valve here was kind of weird. But anyway, there you go. Got some bleed valves in there and all kinds of stuff. It's not just a hose injecting stuff. I guess there's a big takeaway. You guys look thrilled.